Tyler Blackwell walked into Lou's diner with the kind of presence that made heads turn, not because he demanded attention, but because he carried the kind of silent weight that made people pause. At 32, he was already a name people whispered in business schools and boardrooms, youngest CEO in the company's history, billionaire before 30, helicopters, penthouses, private summits, Forbes covers, he had it all. But this morning, he wasn't in New York or LA. He was in a dusty corner of Albuquerque, New Mexico. His jet had landed an hour ago. A scheduled board meeting had been postponed, and for reasons even he couldn't fully explain, Tyler had told his driver to just drive. And that's how he ended up in Lou's, a greasy spoon with cracked vinyl booths and the scent of fried eggs and ancient coffee grinds lingering in the air. He slid into a corner booth, eyes scanning the laminated menu without really reading it. The world outside was loud. Investors, emails, news alerts about his stock price. But here, it was quiet. Until he heard a voice. "Can I get you started with coffee, hun?" It was the Han that hit him first. Warm, familiar, not the fake kind tossed around in five-star hotels. He looked up, and the world tilted. Standing there, coffee pot in one hand, notepad in the other, was Evelyn Harper, his Evelyn, the woman who raised him, the woman who sang to him when he had nightmares, the only person in his childhood who actually loved him. She was older now. Gray streaked her once black hair, her frame a little smaller than he remembered, but the kindness in her eyes, it hadn't changed. She didn't recognize him at first. Why would she? In her mind, Tyler Blackwell was probably still a gangly 10-year-old boy with skinned knees and a silent ache behind his eyes, but he knew her instantly. His voice caught in his throat. "Evelyn?" She blinked, confused. Then she dropped the coffee pot. The crash was loud, but the silence that followed was louder. He stood. She stepped back. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years fell away. It was like seeing a ghost. Only this one had once been the heartbeat of his world. "I thought you were—" Tyler stopped, emotions clogging his voice. "They told me you left. That you moved on." Evelyn didn't speak. Her hands were trembling. A busboy rushed over with paper towels. She waved him off. "I wasn't allowed to say goodbye," she finally whispered. Tyler froze. "What?" She shook her head gently, her voice soft but sharp with buried hurt. "Your parents, they fired me. Told me to leave immediately. Said it was better for you if I just disappeared." Tyler's chest tightened. "I looked for you," he said. She gave him a sad smile. "They made sure you wouldn't find me." Outside, life went on. Cars passed, people laughed. But inside that diner, everything had changed. Tyler sat down slowly, hands on the table, trying to make sense of it. The woman who had given him more love than his own parents had been cast aside, and he never even knew. Not until now. The manager offered Evelyn the rest of the shift off, but she refused. Pride had always been stitched into her spine, quiet, unspoken, but unmistakable. So instead, she refilled the pot, cleaned up the broken glass, and poured Tyler a fresh cup without being asked. "Coffee's on the house," she said, voice level but eyes heavy with something more. Tyler didn't argue. He didn't touch the cup either. He was too busy watching her. Her movements, her worn shoes, the faded name tag that still read Evie, like the kids in the neighborhood used to call her. The last time he saw her, he was 18, packing for college, assuming she had left with goodbyes and gratitude. Maybe a note left on his pillow, but there was nothing, no trace. And now he knew why. He waited until she was back behind the counter before he stood and approached quietly. "Can we talk?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded toward the alley door. 10-minute break. You buying me a smoke?" He blinked. "I didn't know you smoked." "I didn't. Not until after they threw me out." They stepped into the crisp morning air. The alley was quiet, smelling faintly of grease and old cigarettes. Evelyn leaned against the brick wall and lit one with practiced ease. "You look like your mother," she said after a long drag. "But you have your father's eyes." When they're cold, they're ice. I didn't know, Tyler said, barely above a whisper. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Didn't know what? What they did. That they just got rid of you. Evelyn exhaled slowly. They didn't just fire me, Tyler. They destroyed my name, said I was unstable, that I got too attached, that I was inappropriate. Her lips curled, but not in amusement. I spent 6 months trying to get another job with kids. No one would touch me. Eventually, I stopped trying. Tyler's heart twisted. They ruined your life. They tried. But I didn't let them, she replied quietly. I took jobs cleaning, waiting tables, anything I could. I didn't take their hush money. I couldn't stomach spending it. His jaw tightened. Hush money. They left me an envelope, $20,000, in cash, said it was a gesture of goodwill for my years of service, and a condition to never contact you. Tyler stared at the ground, stunned. I'm sorry, he whispered. Evelyn looked at him again, really looked at him. Why are you sorry? Because you were the only person who ever loved me like I mattered, and I let them erase you. Something broke in his voice, and for a second, the billionaire mask slipped. In its place stood the little boy who used to crawl into her lap after his nightmares, the one who called her Evie Mama before he learned not to say such things around his parents. She flicked ash onto the pavement, her voice softer now. You didn't know. I should have asked. I should have looked harder. She sighed. You were just a kid, Tyler. You were surviving. Silence fell between them. Finally, she said, So, what now? Tyler looked up, eyes burning. Now, I find out exactly what my parents did, and then I make it right. Evelyn gave a tired smile. You can't undo the past. No, he agreed, but I can expose it. And maybe build something better from the ashes. She studied him for a long moment, then stubbed out her cigarette and nodded toward the diner door. My break's over. He stepped aside, but before she went in, he asked, Will you let me see you again? She didn't answer right away, then quietly, That depends, Tyler. Are you coming back as the CEO, or the boy who used to leave me crayon drawings under my pillow? She didn't wait for a reply, but Tyler knew which answer he owed her. Tyler flew back to New York that evening, but the skyline didn't feel the same. His penthouse, once a fortress of solitude high above the chaos, now felt sterile, glass, steel, and silence. The voice of Evelyn Harper echoed in his mind. They destroyed my name. I didn't take their hush money. Are you coming back as the CEO, or the boy who used to leave me crayon drawings under my pillow? He poured himself a drink and stared out over the city. Beneath him, Blackwell Enterprises owned 32 buildings. He could point to each one and name the division, the revenue stream, the partner bank. But he couldn't tell you where Evelyn had lived for the past 14 years. The next morning, he canceled all meetings. Reschedule the VC roundtable, he told his assistant. And get me everything you can find on employee terminations during the last 20 years. Specifically childcare staff from the family estate. The woman blinked. From the estate. Tyler's tone left no room for confusion. All of it. Now. Hours later, he was in the Blackwell archives, cold, fireproof rooms beneath the building where secrets were cataloged, not confessed. Dust lined the tops of leather-bound volumes, but Evelyn's file wasn't buried. It was indexed, categorized, and marked resolved. A few cold lines from a former family attorney, then a typed statement. Termination due to emotional overattachment. Confidentiality agreement offered and declined. And then something worse. Internal memos from Richard Blackwell, his father. Short, ruthless notes. End the arrangement swiftly. She's grown sentimental. Ensure she has no legal ground. Blacklist quietly through partner agencies. No press. No trace. The boy will forget her. Tyler's hands trembled. They hadn't just erased Evelyn. They'd dismantled her life piece by piece. all while shielding him from the truth with elite boarding schools and summer adventures abroad. His trust had been bought with distractions, with power, with distance. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an old photo. Him at age 6, toothless grin, arms wrapped around Evelyn's neck. They were sitting under the tree near the garden, her smile wide and real, his head resting on her shoulder. He'd forgotten that photo even existed. Until now. That evening, Tyler drove to the Upper West Side, to a townhouse he hadn't visited since the funeral. His parents' former attorney, James Halbrook, opened the door in a silk robe, confused to see him. "I'm not here for pleasantries," Tyler said. "I know what you and my father did to Evelyn Harper." Halbrook's face fell. "Tyler, you blacklisted her, fired her without cause, tried to silence her." "She was becoming emotionally invasive," the lawyer muttered. "She was raising me," Tyler snapped, "because they weren't." Halbrook shifted uncomfortably. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," Tyler said, "and a list of every person my parents tried to silence, every victim of their private cover-ups." Halbrook's eyes widened. "You don't want to open that door." "I already have." Tyler turned to leave. "And once I'm done opening all of them, I'm going to use the same empire they built to undo what they did." That night, he sat alone again, Evelyn's voice still in his mind. "You can't undo the past." Maybe not, but maybe he could build something honest from its ruins. 2 weeks later, Evelyn was back in her apartment, a one-bedroom walk-up with chipped paint, a broken heater, and a view of the alley. It was small but quiet, and most days, that was enough. She had just sat down with a cup of chamomile tea when the knock came. Cautious, she peeked through the curtain. Tyler Blackwell, standing on her doorstep in a charcoal suit and no tie, holding a plain manila folder. When she opened the door, she crossed her arms instinctively. "I didn't expect you." He nodded. "I promised I'd come back." She stepped aside, not exactly welcoming, but not turning him away either. He didn't sit, just handed her the folder. Inside were papers, official ones, a notarized apology, a signed statement acknowledging the wrongful termination, legal documents that cleared her name across every agency her parents had poisoned. Even the family's private trust had been tapped to pay restitution. Money Evelyn didn't ask for, but Tyler insisted on. She looked up at him, brows knit. "Why now?" "Because it should have happened 14 years ago," he said, "and because I'm not just here to apologize, I'm here to ask for your help." Evelyn tilted her head. "Help?" he exhaled. "I'm starting something new, a foundation, Harper's Hope, named after you." She blinked. "It'll support workers like you, nannies, housekeepers, caregivers, people who were discarded because they got too close, too human. We'll provide housing, legal aid, job placement, therapy, not charity, dignity." Evelyn didn't speak. "I want you to help lead it," Tyler continued. "Not as a figurehead, as a partner." Her arms loosened. "Tyler, I'm a waitress." "You were the only parent I ever had," he said quietly. "You taught me what love looks like, and I want to build something that reflects that." Evelyn sat down slowly, the weight of it hitting her all at once. "People will question your motives," she warned. "Let them," he said. "I know mine." She looked at him for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. "I'll think about it." Tyler smiled, just a little. "That's all I'm asking." Before he left, he pulled one last thing from his coat, a small laminated card, a copy of the crayon drawing he'd once left under her pillow. Him and her beneath a tree, arms stretched, hearts between them. "I found it in one of my old boxes," he said. She traced her finger over it, and her voice cracked when she whispered, "I thought you'd forgotten." "I never did." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep, not because of fear or bitterness, but because for the first time in years, she felt something warm and unexpected: hope. 3 months later, the boardroom of Blackwell Enterprises didn't look the same. Gone were the intimidating oil paintings of Richard and Celeste Blackwell. Gone were the marble busts and intimidating long table where silence used to mean obedience. In their place stood Tyler. No podium, no theatrics, just a simple screen behind him that read, "Harper's Hope, from Empire to Empathy." Half the board was confused. The other half looked quietly horrified. Tyler's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the fire behind it. For decades, this company prospered by controlling the narrative, silencing people, cutting corners, protecting profits at the expense of humanity. That ends today. A murmur moved across the room like static. One board member raised a hand, sneering. "With all due respect, Tyler, you're talking about rewriting the entire company's mission based on a nanny?" Tyler smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm rewriting the mission based on what we should have always stood for: decency, dignity, and responsibility. He tapped the tablet in his hand. Names appeared on the screen. Effective immediately, these executives are being investigated for misconduct, blacklisting, and financial manipulation, practices that began under my parents but were allowed to continue unchecked. There was a gasp. Two men stood to protest. Security was already at the door. "You can't do this," one shouted. "I just did," Tyler replied. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence. "I know what this company was built on," he said, "but what we build next, that's what will matter." And then he walked out. Later that afternoon, Tyler arrived at Harper's Hope's temporary headquarters, a modest converted warehouse on the east side filled with volunteers, file boxes, and second-hand furniture. Evelyn was there, sorting through intake forms, sleeves rolled up, reading glasses perched on her nose. When she looked up, her face broke into a smile, not one of surprise but of trust, a look she hadn't given him in years. "You look like a man who just broke something important," she teased. "I did," Tyler replied, loosening his tie. "Now I want to build something better." She handed him a folder. "First intake family is arriving tomorrow. Mother of 3. Housekeeper for a hotel chain that cut her loose after she reported abuse." He nodded, reading quickly. "We'll help her. Legal aid, housing, therapy, whatever it takes." Evelyn leaned back, watching him. "You know, when you were little, you once told me you wanted to build a treehouse big enough for every sad kid in the world." He chuckled. "Sounds like me." "Well," she said, "maybe you're finally building it." Tyler looked around the buzzing warehouse. Volunteers were laughing. Clients were being met with warmth. There were no titles here, no security clearances, just people helping people. "I think," he said softly, "this is the first thing I've ever built that really matters." Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle, familiar. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." And for the first time since he'd inherited the empire, Tyler didn't feel alone. He felt right. 1 year later, the old Blackwell Foundation building had been fully repurposed. Where sterile halls once echoed with polished speeches and shallow charity galas, there were now playrooms, counseling offices, tutoring corners, and warm kitchens. The newly christened Harper's Hope Center sat at the heart of the city, welcoming, sunlit, and full of life. On a quiet Thursday morning, Tyler stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down at it all. Children played on soft mats. Volunteers passed out meals. A woman in tears was embraced by a counselor in the hallway, and no one turned away. There was no PR photographer, no sponsorship plaque, just healing, just humanity. Beside him stood Evelyn. "You could have kept it all," she said quietly. "The empire, the power, the applause." Tyler glanced at her. What good is applause in an empty room? She smiled faintly. "You know, your mother used to say that emotions were distractions, that love made people weak." He shook his head. She was wrong. Love isn't weakness. It's what makes the rest of it worth doing. She looked out over the center. "You've changed more than you think." He sighed. "I didn't change. I returned." Evelyn raised a brow. "I returned to who I was when I was 10 years old, when I believed that kindness was stronger than wealth. When I left you drawings under your pillow. That version of me? You raised him. I just had to find him again." Downstairs, the first official plaque was being installed in the garden courtyard, in honor of Evelyn Harper, for those who loved us when no one else did. Evelyn's hand touched her heart. Tears welled up but didn't fall. Tyler turned toward her, his voice soft. "You never asked for recognition, but you saved me." She shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you where to look." Later that day, in a private press release, Tyler announced that he would officially step down as CEO of Blackwell Enterprises, not for scandal, not for profit, but to commit his life fully to Harper's hope. The media scrambled. Analysts were baffled, but Tyler didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. Instead, he spent his mornings answering letters from struggling families. He visited shelter programs, sat in story circles with traumatized children, and in the evenings, he walked home, not to a penthouse, but a modest brownstone Evelyn now shared with him. Some nights they'd sit on the porch together with tea in hand, listening to the wind. And on one of those nights, Evelyn turned to him and asked, "Do you ever miss the old life?" Tyler looked at her and smiled, not for a second, because the life he once lived was built on inherited walls, but this was a life built on love. And in the end, he knew, legacy isn't what you leave behind in your name, it's what you build in someone else's.